Now, two new studies by the Institute of Policy Studies, or IPS, show how Singaporeans connect and where gaps remain. The findings highlight a shared challenge building meaningful connections in an increasingly diverse society. IPS is now calling for more focus and resources on foreign integration as a pillar of Singapore's multicultural framework. Now, one of the studies, a social pilot, found that residents and non-residents agree on values like mutual respect, but differ on issues of identity amid rising immigration. Bahajjaj with more.
Across 3 weeks, 24 residents and non-residents from the East Coast GRC gathered to discuss foreign integration. Representing different races, genders and ages, the group discussed themes of community life, employment, education and multiculturalism. With the highest consensus on community life, which comprises norms and mutual respect, and the lowest on multiculturalism. For this, two main views remain unresolved. One, wanting Singapore's identity to evolve over time, and the other, protecting its hard-won identity. These findings come amid a changing social landscape, with non-residents now making up roughly 30% of the population in 2025.
Our society now includes first-generation immigrants, third-generation Singaporeans, and everyone in between. This diversity in background, culture, and heritage naturally leads to greater diversity in perspectives, values, aspirations, and concerns. The reality is this: if we do not talk about differences, friction will escalate. If we do not build bridges across divides, these divides will only deepen.
While some differences remain, over 90% of participants found the exercise positive and empowering.
The willingness to listen was definitely there. And you don't get such opportunities to discuss, for example, among friends, we don't talk about this very openly, right? So we, or even if we talk, we just touch the surface of it and just move.
I was just really very heartened by the whole process. I just wow, this is such a difficult topic. I'm so glad that somehow it happened. But I do feel that, yes, we are ready enough. And we just have to trust that people are mature and we can have these kind of conversations.
During an online Q&A, organizers say that while the pilot was heartening, it's also cautionary, showing that questions on identity require sustained engagement over time, and it's not just a single exercise. IPS has also recommended to expand the pilot to other areas in Singapore with greater collaboration between research institutions and partners.
The government cannot create social cohesion alone. We can create the conditions for engagement, but cannot manufacture or legislate trust or fraternity. These are built through relationships, honest dialogues, and willingness of everyone to stay connected, stay open to different perspectives, and more importantly, work together even when we may not agree with everything each other says.
And it's off to a good start, as at the end of the 3 weeks, participants came up with a ground-up community project together for a food heritage trail in February, aimed at increasing interactions between locals and foreigners.
Turning to another study, diverse friendship networks across differences like age, gender and ethnicity have been linked to better social outcomes amid an era of emerging technologies. It includes having higher trust among Singaporeans and a deeper sense of belonging. Nadine Yam with more.
Between October to November 2025, nearly 3,800 people were surveyed on the diversity of their friendships. Besides age and gender, attributes like housing type and education levels were also considered. Close to 90% of the respondents said they have at least one close friend, someone they feel at ease with and can confide in. But it seems friendship circles in Singapore have been getting smaller over time.
Certain groups of Singaporeans find it hard to relate to other groups of society, which made us want to look at whether perhaps with the changing ways people have friendships, particularly in an online world, now with AI chatbots, whether those may be some of the reasons why people's friendship circles are increasingly shrinking.
For many respondents, schools and workplaces were two most common locations where their close friendships first formed. But concerns remain that schools may not offer enough diverse interactions. Some suggestions include having more inter-school activities through sports or drama.
Because it's unlikely that people are going to, change where they're sending their kids to school. But if the school curriculum or the academic environment in Singapore can involve more mixing, that would be a great step forward.
Diverse friendships have also been associated with a stronger sense of belonging, civic participation and social cohesion. According to the survey, individuals with more diverse friendships were less likely to perceive a lack of shared values among people in Singapore and more likely to feel accepted by others in the community. They were also more likely to step outside their comfort zones and get to know people beyond their existing circles.
That's why it's very important to design experiences that facilitate the bridging of diverse people, but also in how we publicize our events. Marketing is so important so that you're able to capture the diversity of the community that you're trying to reach out to.
The study also explores how emerging technologies like AI shape social connections. And while a small number of people are turning to AI for companionship, most still value close human friendships more.
Well, so much to dig into. So let's do that with Dr. Clara Lee, Research Fellow at the Institute of Policy Studies Social Lab, National University of Singapore. Dr. Lee, welcome. Now, we heard there social circles are shrinking while diversity increases. Now, we also know that slightly more than 1 in 10 Singaporeans say they have no close friends. It doesn't sound like a lot, but from your research, what's driving that? And should this worry us as a society?
Yeah. So small friendship groups can still be emotionally supportive and deeply valuable for the purposes of hanging out, seeking advice, and feeling understood. The bigger worry is actually about who is missing from those smaller circles. If smaller networks also become more similar, then we actually lose opportunities for cross-group contact and, building empathy for someone who is going to be vastly different from us. And we know from our study that how similar or different your friends are from yourself has associations with a bunch of societal outcomes, including social cohesion and a sense of belonging. So we should not just be worried about smaller circles, but also the lack of bridges. And if people still have, exposure to different networks, then the viewers would be fewer.
Interesting. I also heard from the package from our reporter that most people still form their closest friendships in school and at work, even in this digital age. Should we look at that as an online platform haven't quite replaced face-to-face connections in some meaningful ways?
Yeah. So we do find that schools and workplaces are still really the dominant place that our respondents actually, first met their close friends. And we find that online spaces, even though people do meet, other friends online, that is still in the minority, though we might see that growing with, younger people being online more often and, finding people with common interests that they could speak to, that they could share their problems and issues with.
Now, you talked about the online space, encouraging more diversity in friendships, in the friendship networks and the bridges that you talked about earlier. So what does this tell us about how digital spaces are kind of reshaping who we mix with, compared to the usual schools and workplaces?
Yeah. So when we are online, we usually find friends who, share a similar hobby, a similar interest as us, be it gaming, fan communities, or even hobby subreddits. You can end up befriending people who live in a different country, is of a different age, or work in totally different occupations. And it's simply because, you might love the same game, you love the same band, or, even the same craft. But if you think about schools and workplaces, who we mix with largely depends on things like, age, perhaps our qualifications, and also our occupation. And these settings often funnel us into mixing with people who are similar on key demographic dimensions. So, of course, platforms are, online platforms are not just, the great equalizer, but algorithms can also still encourage echo chambers. But as people are still primarily driven by interest in seeking out others online, this is a reason why we might see more diverse friendship networks there than, when we compare it with more offline friendships.
Now, tell us a bit more about your finding of differences across communities, with Indian and Malay respondents more likely to have diverse friendships than their Chinese respondents. So what can we take away about majority-minority dynamics in Singapore, and perhaps the opportunities that we need to create for more meaningful cross-group interaction?
So this is actually quite common in many multi-ethnic societies. So for minority groups, they are more likely to interact across groups simply because many environments like schools, like our workplaces and our neighborhoods are often, majority Chinese spaces by the fact that they are the majority. And this can translate into more heterogeneous friendship networks for these groups. But for majority groups, it's kind of easier for them to remain within the same circle. So this is kind of about exposure and opportunities are presented to the different groups. Existing policies in Singapore have tried to create opportunities for more cross-group interactions, but it has to go beyond just one-off or more symbolic mixing of groups. It has to make interactions more likely, but also more meaningful, where people actually come together to form more meaningful and lasting friendships.
All right, we have to leave it there, but we do thank you for those insights, Dr. Clara Lee from the IPS Social Lab.